My daughter-in-law, Tara, looked me straight in the eye and said, "There's no room for you on this family trip." 15 people, including cousins and in-laws, packed their bags for Disneyland, but apparently not me, the woman who raised her husband, the grandmother of their children. I stood silent, my hands still holding the gifts I bought for my grandchildren. They thought I would just stay behind quietly, like an unwanted guest in my own family. But what they didn't know was that I had a plan, one that would turn their laughter into stunned silence on the 4th day. When Tara told me there was no room for me on the trip, I felt a sting deeper than I could admit out loud. But to understand why those words cut so cruelly, you'd have to know who I am and how my life has been stitched together. My name is Evelyn Hale. I am 67 years old, a widow for almost a decade, and for most of my life I was a community nurse. People used to say I had a way of making even the coldest patient relax with just a hand on their shoulder. My hands have healed wounds, soothed fevers, and written more medical charts than I care to remember. And yet, in my own home, they were treated as though they were intruding hands, meddling where they did not belong. After my husband passed, I lived alone in the small house we had worked so hard to buy. I managed well enough. But one winter afternoon, I slipped on the front steps while carrying groceries. The bruise on my hip healed quickly, but Noah, my only son, insisted I shouldn't be alone anymore. He and his wife, Tara, suggested I move in with them. They made it sound like a generous gesture. "Mom, it'll be safer and you'll be closer to the kids." I wanted to believe their words. I packed away most of my belongings, leaving behind the echoes of the life I had built with my husband, and carried only the essentials into their home. Their suburban neighborhood looked like something out of a glossy magazine. Freshly mowed lawns, trimmed hedges, neighbors who waved when you walked by. On my first week there, I imagined this might be the new chapter of family closeness. But reality has a way of stripping down illusions. Instead of the cozy upstairs room I thought I might share, I was directed downstairs to the basement, rebranded as the guest suite. It had a bed, a dresser, and a small lamp. Tara smiled as she said, "You'll have more privacy here." The unspoken truth was obvious. They wanted privacy from me. Every morning I busied myself with routines that kept me feeling useful. I prepared breakfast before the others woke up, set out lunch boxes for my grandchildren, Maya and Owen, and often handled the grocery lists. Sometimes I even slipped cash into the family budget when unexpected bills arrived. Yet in conversations, I was always framed as staying with us. Not part of the household, not a root of the family tree, just staying, like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. Despite this, moments of joy still lived in small corners. In the afternoons, when the children returned from school, they would come running down the stairs to find me. Maya, with her curious eyes, loved hearing stories about when her father was a boy. Owen would curl against me on the couch, demanding a tale about the hospital where I once worked. In those pockets of time, I felt seen, not as a burden, but as the grandmother they adored. The garden behind the house also gave me a kind of peace. I watered flowers there, whispering stories to the blooms as though they were old friends. Those hours in the sunlight reminded me of who I truly was, before the walls of the basement tried to rewrite my identity, but shadows were growing around me. Tara managed the household with subtle rules, many of which didn't feel like they were meant for everyone. "Please don't run the washer on weekends, it spikes the bill." "Let's not have guests over, it disrupts the kids." Each instruction was wrapped in politeness, but carried the sting of exclusion. It was culture turned cold, the American way of saying one thing while meaning another. Not once did anyone say, "You are a burden." They didn't need to. Their rules spoke louder than words. One evening, I lingered near the kitchen while Tara was on the phone. Her voice dropped low, but I caught a single sentence. "If she just signs the paper, everything will be simpler." My stomach nodded. What paper? I stayed silent, not wanting to provoke suspicion, but the unease settled heavy in my chest, and still there were moments that lifted me again. When Maya begged me to attend her school festival, she beamed as if I were her honored guest. I clutched her hand in the crowd of children, and for that night, I felt like family again, not an intruder. It was a reminder that even in the coldest houses, there are still sparks of warmth, but I couldn't ignore the subtle hints anymore. One Sunday morning, while clearing the breakfast table, my eyes fell on a large binder left open on the counter. The title on the page read, House Rules. My eyes scanned the list until they stopped at a bold line, Kitchen Curfew 8 p.m. I closed the binder slowly, my hands trembling. They didn't have to tell me out loud that I was unwelcome. They had already written it down. The morning before their trip, I was in my basement room folding wrapping paper around small gifts I had bought for Maya and Owen. A stuffed bear for him, a puzzle book for her. I pictured their faces lighting up when I handed the presents over at Disneyland. I was ready, suitcase zipped, heart warm with anticipation. Then Tara appeared at the doorframe. She didn't step inside. Her arms were crossed, voice steady but cold. Evelyn, about tomorrow. There's no room left in the van. We already have 15 people. It's just too full. I looked at her, waiting for a smile that might tell me she was joking, but she turned her gaze away as though reading from a script. I felt the sting in my chest, but I didn't argue. Instead, I nodded slowly, as if her words hadn't pierced me. I understand, I whispered. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. She left quickly, and I stayed seated on the edge of the bed, still holding the wrapped puzzle book. Dignity was the only thing I had left in that moment, and I clung to it. I refused to cry in front of her. Later that night, when the house was quiet, I wandered upstairs to pour myself a glass of water. On the kitchen counter, Noah's iPad sat unlocked. I don't know what made me glance at the photos, but I did. An album was open titled Nuclear Only. The images showed planned itineraries, reservations, even color-coded clothing themes for the Disneyland trip. And in every caption, there was no mention of me. Family of 15. All of us. Not one picture included a grandmother. The word nuclear hit me like a blow. I was outside the circle, erased, invisible. Betrayal rarely shouts. It whispers in the details in the albums where your face is missing. I returned to my basement room, gifts still waiting in the corner, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My mind swirled with questions. Should I wish them a good trip? Should I pretend this didn't crush me? Or should I finally speak? My lips moved, but no sound came. The next day, the house buzzed with excitement. Suitcases stacked by the door, laughter echoing through the halls, children chattering about roller coasters. I sat on the couch with Maya and Owen, hugging them tighter than usual before Noah whisked them away. "We'll FaceTime, Grandma," Maya promised. Tara avoided my eyes as she loaded the van. Noah finally turned to me, his voice rushed. "Mom, don't make this a big deal, please. I promise we'll plan something later, okay?" His words weren't a comfort. They were a warning. I stood at the driveway watching the van disappear, my hand raised in a wave that no one returned. The silence after their departure was deafening. Inside, I reheated leftover soup and sat alone at the dining table. Spoon by spoon, the house seemed to press its emptiness against me. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. The chairs sat neatly in place, as though reminding me I was only a temporary occupant. My thoughts swung like a pendulum. Shock, sorrow, self-blame, then a strange calm. Perhaps I had been naive to think moving in would mean closeness. Perhaps all they wanted was my silence, my labor, my signature on some invisible line. That evening, I called an old friend, a former supervisor from my nursing days. I asked about lawyers who specialized in elder law. There was a pause on the line. Then she gave me 2 names. "Just in case," she said softly. I thanked her, though my voice cracked. After After we hung up, I went to tidy Noah's desk in the upstairs office. I told myself it was just to keep busy, to fight the loneliness settling into my bones. As I slid a stack of bills into order, a thin folder slipped out. I bent to pick it up. My eyes froze on the first page, quitclaim deed, draft. My breath caught. My name was printed in bold letters at the top, followed by lines that spoke of relinquishing rights to property. My hands shook as I tucked the paper back under the pile. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thick. So this was what Tara had meant by, if she just signs the paper. It wasn't kindness. It was a plan. I turned off the light, my reflection staring back at me in the darkened window. Betrayal was no longer just suspicion, it was documented. I hardly slept that night. The image of the quitclaim draft haunted me, each line etched into my mind like a betrayal carved in stone. The document demanded that I relinquish all rights to the home without compensation, a silent erasure of my name, my history, my sacrifices. My fingers trembled as I remembered the feel of the paper, cold and official. How long had they been planning this? The next morning, I pulled out the dusty metal box I had carried from my old house, the one place where I kept every deed, insurance paper, and legal document that mattered. My late husband and I had been careful planners, always cautious. As I flipped through the manila folders, a wave of relief washed over me. The house Noah and Tara now lived in wasn't in their names at all. It was protected under irrevocable, living trust. My name stood alone as trustee, the only authority. I sat back, stunned. They had tried to erase me from what was never theirs to begin with. My thoughts spun faster. I turned to my laptop and searched through months of unopened emails from the bank. One subject line stopped me cold. HELOC application denied. My heart raced as I opened it. The denial was clear. Application rejected due to signature mismatch. Someone had tried to secure a line of credit against my property and failed because the signature didn't match mine. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was fraud. I whispered into the empty room, how far would they have gone if I hadn't found out? You might wonder, have you ever signed something without reading every word? Imagine learning later that your own family tried to use your name to steal the roof over your head. I closed the laptop, pressing my hand against my forehead, willing myself not to collapse under the weight of what I'd uncovered. The evidence was damning, but still fragmented. I needed clarity. When I glanced at Noah's calendar app, another detail tightened the noose. Under upcoming appointments, I saw an entry. Quinn. HELOC follow-up. Quinn was Tara's maiden name. The appointment was scheduled for the very week they returned from Disneyland. My pulse pounded in my ears. They weren't finished. For the first time in years, I felt a surge of resolve that wasn't born of kindness or sacrifice, but of necessity. This wasn't just about being left out of a trip. It was about survival, about reclaiming my dignity before it was legally stolen. 2 days later, I sat across from an elder law attorney, a gray-haired man with sharp eyes that softened when he listened. I explained everything, the quitclaim draft, the denied HELOC, the subtle pressure to sign papers. He nodded slowly, then tapped his pen against a yellow pad. Mrs. Hale, you are the sole trustee of your trust. No one can force you to sign anything. The draft you found is worthless unless you consent. What they attempted with the HELOC? He shook his head. That borders on fraud. We'll take precautions. He advised me to freeze my credit immediately, to place a fraud alert with all 3 bureaus. He outlined steps I could take to secure the trust documents in my accounts. I followed every instruction, each click and phone call, strengthening my spine. When he examined the denied HELOC paperwork more closely, his expression darkened. Look here, he said, pointing to the digital application. This signature, it's forged, poorly, but forged nonetheless. The word sent chills through me. Forgery. It was one thing to feel unwanted. It was another to see in black and white that my own family had impersonated me to bleed value from my home. I left his office with a folder of resources and a new sense of clarity. But clarity alone wasn't enough. I needed proof that would hold up beyond suspicion. That's when I decided to hire a private investigator, a woman named Sandra, recommended by the attorney. Her specialty was uncovering family financial fraud and elder exploitation. Within a week, she sent me her first findings, screenshots from a group chat between Tara, Noah, and a few of Tara's siblings. One message made my blood run cold. Room for joy, not for mom. Another followed with laughing emojis. They mocked my absence as if it were a gift to the trip, a relief to their fun. I stared at the words, my heart breaking and hardening at the same time. Sandra didn't stop there. She tracked Tara to a local assisted living facility. Attached to the report was a photo. Tara walking through the lobby, clipboard in hand. The caption beneath read, "Inquiry about room availability for Evelyn." I stared at the image until my eyes blurred. It wasn't enough that they wanted me out of their house. They were already planning where to put me next. The betrayal was no longer a quiet wound. It was a full assault on my identity, my autonomy, my very existence. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't powerless. I had truth on my side. The investigator's next report arrived in a thick envelope, heavier than I expected. My hands shook as I pulled out the documents and photographs. Among them was a bank statement I hadn't seen before. Line by line, it revealed something I had feared but hadn't yet confirmed. My credit card points, carefully saved for years with dreams of maybe one last trip of my own, were drained. Thousands of points vanished, transferred into another account. When I asked Sandra how she had traced it, her reply was plain. "They used your points for their Disneyland package." I gripped the paper until my knuckles whitened. Those points were built on decades of groceries, medical supplies, and gas stations. Little tokens of a lifetime, stolen without a word. More pages followed. Noah was drowning in credit card debt. Balances swollen by restaurant bills, electronics, and renovations half finished. And Tara, meticulous as ever, had written out her solution in a private note found on her tablet. Quit claim HELOC. Pay debt. Remodel kitchen. The arrows were like daggers, each one carving my role as a sacrifice for their ambition. I sat frozen at the kitchen table, staring at those words. Greed wasn't hidden here. It strutted across the page, bold and unashamed. Then came the voicemail. Sandra had managed to recover a recording from Tara's phone. Her voice filled the room, casual but chilling. "Once she's in the facility, she'll be safer, and the house will finally be ours." The words echoed long after the recording ended. To them, I was not a mother or grandmother. I was a liability to be managed, a pawn to unlock equity, a guest who had overstayed her welcome in what was truly my own home. You see, betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it speaks in tidy lists and voicemail assurances. Sometimes it hides behind the smile of a daughter-in-law serving dinner while plotting your removal. At my next meeting with the attorney, I slid the evidence across his desk. He leafed through it carefully, his lips pressed thin. Finally, he looked at me with a measured expression. "Mrs. Hale, you are not powerless. You hold the trust, you hold the deed, and you hold the right to revoke their license to live in your house. You can do it whenever you choose." Those words settled into me like a stone dropped into still water, ripples spreading wide. I had spent so long believing I was at their mercy. To hear that I could, with one notice, reclaim not just my house, but my dignity, was almost too much to process. On the drive home, I clenched the steering wheel, breathing deeply. Power didn't mean rage. It meant choice. And I finally had one. That night, I sat at my desk with a list. One by one, I followed the attorney's instructions. I froze my credit with every bureau. I placed alerts at the bank. I updated my beneficiary information so nothing could be tampered with in my absence. Each task was a brick in a wall of protection around me. Then I began drafting 2 documents. The first, a notice of revocation of license to occupy. The second, an offer of transitional assistance. Because despite everything, I wasn't seeking to destroy Noah or even Tara. I only wanted them to face what they had done and leave without dragging me into further ruin. My hand was steady as I typed. My heart was steady too, though lined with sorrow. The plan wasn't finished. I booked a ticket to Anaheim, arriving on the 4th day of their trip. My attorney arranged for a mobile notary to meet me at the Grand Californian Hotel in the lobby at 3:30 p.m. The image played in my head over and over, me walking in while they laughed, then showing them the truth they had tried so hard to bury. But in the quiet before all of that, I allowed myself space to breathe. I practiced deep inhalations, exhalations, reminding myself that anger didn't need to guide me. I picked up pen and paper, writing letters to Maya and Owen, letters filled with love, with stories of their father as a child, with reassurances that my love for them was unshakable. No matter what happened, they deserved to know that. The next morning, I opened my email to find the confirmation. Mobile Notary, Grand Californian Lobby, Day 4, 3:30 p.m. My hands lingered on the screen. The stage was set. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Disneyland was alive with laughter, the air thick with popcorn and children's voices. I stood at the edge of the crowd near the castle, the sun casting long shadows across the photo spot where families lined up for their portraits. And there they were, Noah, Tara, Maya, Owen, and a parade of cousins. They looked carefree, their faces bright with joy as if I had never existed. I stepped forward, calm, deliberate. My heart beat steady, not with anger, but with resolve. When they noticed me, the smiles faltered. Maya gasped and ran toward me, clutching my waist as if afraid I might vanish. Noah's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Tara froze, her hand still gripping Owen's shoulder. "I thought there wasn't enough room," I said quietly. My voice cut through the noise, drawing stares from a few nearby tourists. Tara's face paled. Noah stammered, "Mom, what are you doing here?" I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I slipped a folder from my bag and laid out the evidence in my hands. Printed screenshots of the nuclear-only chat, the credit card reward statement drained for their trip, and the bank's HELOC denial email. One by one, I held them up, the paper flapping in the light breeze. Their laughter from earlier seemed impossibly distant now. "Is this family?" I asked softly. "To erase me from photos, to spend what I earned, to forge my name?" Noah glanced around nervously, aware of the eyes upon us. "Not here," he muttered. I nodded. "Exactly. Not here. Come with me." I guided them toward the lobby of the Grand Californian Hotel, away from the crowd. Waiting by the fireplace was the mobile notary, briefcase at his side, calm as stone. Tara's eyes widened. "What is this?" she hissed. "The truth," I answered, "and the justice you thought I would never claim." I opened the folder again, sliding each page across the coffee table. "Your words," I told Tara, showing the group chat. "Your actions," I added, pointing to the HELOC denial stamped with signature mismatch. Finally, I tapped the line of the bank statement that showed my points drained for their trip. "And your theft." For a moment, the only sound was the crackling fire. Then Noah whispered, voice trembling, "Mom, we thought it would just be temporary, a way to get through some debts. We weren't going to hurt you forever." His words collapsed under their own weight, hollow and weak. The notary shifted in his chair, setting the papers ready. Tara crossed her arms, defiant. "This doesn't prove anything," she said, but I only reached into my phone and pressed play. The voicemail filled the room, Tara's voice declaring I'd be safer in a facility while the house would finally be ours. The blood drained from Noah's face. He sank into a chair, burying his head in his hands. Tara's bravado cracked, her eyes darting toward the door as though escape could erase the evidence. I steadied my breath. I hadn't come here to scream. I had come here to restore balance. I pulled out the notice of revocation of license to occupy, sliding it across to Noah. "You have 60 days to leave my house," I said. "I will help with a deposit if you accept responsibility and seek family counseling. I won't see my grandchildren torn apart, but I will not be erased." Maya clung tighter to me, Owen crawling into my lap. Their innocent presence was a reminder of why I chose justice over revenge. Noah looked up, eyes wet. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know how far Tara was going. I thought I could manage it. I thought—" His words trailed into silence. Tara slammed her hand on the table, snarling, "We don't have to listen to this. She's manipulating you." Then she stormed out, heels striking the tile like a drumbeat of defeat. The notary nodded, gathering signatures and stamping where required. The formalities felt surreal, like drawing a curtain on years of unspoken betrayal. As the papers were tucked away, Noah lingered, pale and trembling. Finally, he said, "Mom, I need to tell you the truth about my debt. It's worse than you think." His words trembled, the admission hanging in the air like the next storm cloud. 3 months passed, and the world around me reshaped itself into something I could finally breathe in. I no longer lived in the basement, no longer tiptoed around rules written to exclude me. Instead, I had moved into a senior co-housing community, a place filled with women and men who carried their own stories of loss, resilience, and quiet victories. My days had a rhythm again. Morning tea on the balcony, yoga classes that loosened my stiff joints, cooking workshops where I laughed at my own clumsy attempts at new recipes. For the first time in years, I wasn't simply existing under someone else's roof. I was living under my own. Noah had begun counseling, something I wasn't sure he'd ever agree to. He admitted his debts were crushing, that he had let shame and pride drive him into Tara's schemes. Piece by piece, he was repairing what he had broken, working longer hours, attending meetings with a financial advisor. It would take years, but at least he was facing it. Tara, however, had walked away. The separation papers arrived quietly, and Noah didn't fight them. The house of cards she had built had collapsed, and with it, her place in our family. Maya and Owen came to stay with me every other weekend. Their laughter filled my small apartment, echoing off the walls like sunlight. We baked cookies together, went on short hikes, and at night, they curled up beside me as I told them stories, not of betrayal, but of courage, hope, and the kind of love that doesn't vanish even when it's tested. They didn't need to know every detail. Children deserve to grow up with trust still intact. The house that once chained me to pain became my shield. With the help of my attorney, I rented it out, securing a steady income that ensured I would never again depend on reluctant charity. It wasn't revenge, it was practicality. It was dignity. My home would no longer be used as leverage against me, but as a foundation for my independence. I found peace in the small things. The steam of tea rising in the morning light, the sound of neighbors laughing down the hall, the stretch of my arms in yoga, a reminder that my body, though aging, still carried me with strength. For years, I had lived under the illusion that sacrifice alone was enough to guarantee love, but I learned that sacrifice without respect is simply surrender. One afternoon, as I sifted through my mail, I paused at an envelope marked in handwriting I recognized. Tara. My breath caught as I unfolded the letter. The words were surprisingly humble. "I want to apologize for everything, but there's something else you don't know." The letter ended abruptly, almost like she couldn't bear to finish. I folded it back carefully, unsettled by the cliff she had left me on. Still, I didn't let it consume me. Apologies are words, actions are proof. If she truly wanted to make amends, she would have to show it. As the seasons shifted, I often reflected on what had happened. The betrayals, the discoveries, the confrontation. It all shaped me into someone stronger, not colder. My sacrifices as a mother and grandmother weren't erased, but I no longer allowed them to be used against me. I realized that true family isn't measured by obligation, but by respect and reciprocity. And to anyone listening to my story, I would say this: know your rights, guard your finances, protect your dignity, love generously but not blindly. Ask yourself, what would you do to defend your self-worth if it were threatened by the very people you trusted most? Injustice had tried to write me out of my own life. Discovery gave me clarity. Justice returned balance. And hope, the quiet, steady kind, lit my path forward. One evening, as fireworks lit up the night sky, I stood hand in hand with Maya and Owen. Their faces glowed in the bursts of color, their eyes wide with wonder. I didn't think of betrayal in that moment. I thought of resilience, of the ties that remain true. My voice, soft but steady, whispered, "No matter what happens, you'll always have me." The night ended not with bitterness, but with warmth. Perhaps the door to reconciliation would remain cracked open if Noah truly changed, if Tara truly meant her words. But for now, I had peace, and peace was enough.